Right, here we are, Mr. Sean Thornton. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the space.
Thank you for having.
Of course. So we just invoked the word meaning. Meaning is a word that has been very meaningful to me lately. And I would love to hear you go down the rabbit hole of meaning and how that word fits into your world.
Thank you, Blake. Yeah, it's honorable to partake in a discussion, a conversation around meaning, and it's an honorable thing to do for the world and to yourself, and it's the only call to adventure that ever existed, really. I think I see the call to adventure in anything that contains meaning, and meaning so much of meaning is the nothing form, the meaning is the bedrock, so to speak, out of which story emerged to me in my mythologically minded self, and understanding what story is. Meaning is the paradox of a story, and it's kind of just how the Taoist kind of inclusion of the way that cannot be named, you know, is the way. There is this kind of evidence for meaning as this intangible substrate out of this ontological bedrock out of which all form is created, and story is the dance of psyche, and form is that the contours of the dance, the genres, the salsa, the flamingo, and the jig. So thank you for your question, for asking.
So beautiful. I feel like I need to pause you every 5 seconds because I can tell you're speaking straight from your ontology. That is like I know that you've spent thousands of hours thinking about it, writing about it. And so it's like so deeply interwoven within you. And I feel like I just need to like unpack every single piece of it and how the puzzle pieces are connected and whatnot. Because it's just like it's a well. It's a freaking well with diamonds pouring out of it. You mentioned that um like meaning is what gave rise to story. You said something along those lines, or maybe it was the other way around, but I think it was like story kind of meaning gave rise to story, something like this. Can you clarify that and explain what you mean by that?
Absolutely, abs. Mm. The alchemical word is popping up in my image screen right now. The alchemical framework, I think, is the framework that's necessary to see paradox. I to explain paradox in depth at some point, and that has a specific meaning, and that is invaluable in seeking form and making sense of ontology. Um, the alchemical framework, in terms of how meaning is a bedrock, and how all bedrocks are the lack of being, the gone beyond the beyond. That the alchemical understanding of what alchemy is, and what taking a system, a being, a form, an isolated infinity, such as a human being, and putting it through the rise and fall of a story, the call to adventure and the motion, the dance of a hero's journey. The alchemical framework, in a metaphorical nutshell, is to see the mountain as a mountain. Next, to see the mountain as a reflection. And then finally, again, to see the mountain as a mountain. And that parabola is a bell curve, and it's the nature of nature. It's found in every crystal and every insect and every population and statistics, every statistic that's generally relative across the board. It's the way patterns distribute. So thank you.
Can you double click on the bell curve?
Absolutely. Fundamentally, fundamentally it's motion, and what it dovetails into nicely is the metaphor. The fundamental nature of home in your life will always be the journey. Motion will never not be the static resting place of being. So anything that makes sense of itself, any sense of belonging, is motion, is movement. Likewise, without going too deep into the rabbit hole of blind spots, losing the way and self-deception is motion that doesn't call itself motion, and in so doing is wandering blindly. Now, to return to the idea that home is the way, that the path, being on the path, being serviceable to the world, to yourself, is walking clearly with path, the way. That means that the hurdles you go through, the parabola is the process of change, that the parabola is the definition for change, for how we can both be ourself now and ourself tomorrow, for how you can go through a breakup and heal, for how you can die while living and process grief while dead. It is the substrate, it is the metaphorical substrate and the metaphorical fact of infinity. Fact of infinity. Kind of nicely to wrap up this parabola idea and what meaning has to do with it. When you move through life, you start on one end and you climb a mountain and you realize the mountain is not a mountain, and you come down on the other end and you're exactly where you're both where you started and exactly not where you started at all, and completely never the same. So the paradox shows up in that phenomenon, in that framework, and that's alchemical, to essentially transmute yourself and to do the shadow work is to have the equal and opposite reaction for all of the climbing that you do in the adventure of your life, because the soul needs to be nurtured.
I would love to hear you talk about meaning and I guess the nuances of how we are actively generating meaning slash able to cultivate it versus meaning as something that is inherent, is a substrate of reality that is, it's more of like a recognizing. Um, yeah. Because,
Mm.
and let me just say one more thing, because I believe that like meaning is what humans are hungry for. Like that is what our thirst craves. And so, yeah, I'll pass it over to you.
And honoring you, I'm honoring you in my parts work internally. Is like a part of me is just like wants to get stoked and go like, dude, you have such beautiful questions and a way of thinking and seeing the world that just can't come up in the parts world, and I have to speak to the part that kind of is still in Santa Cruz and still stoked like that. And thank you for just
Bro, all the parts are
going here.
welcome, man. I feel like you're like swimming in the deep wells of metaphor and the mythopoetic, and like I'm like dipping my toes in the stream with you, and then my question, and I'm just like, can we break this down like on the literal and like the rational? Can we break this? Like, I want to be like a little bit of a bridge, but I love it so much. I think I'm just taking the invitation to fully take the cannonball into the deep waters with you. Uh, so anyway, check.
Appreciate,
And
yeah.
let me just say one more thing that's on my mind, and I know I can also repeat any part of the question I said before if you need. I know I kind of created a buffet here for you, but um,
Thank you.
one of the things that is coming to mind is like, Dan Brown, the Mahamudra lineage, that they're shout out Dan Brown, the man.
Literally,
Um,
holy fuck.
the I don't think the idea isn't the right word. The bringing in awakened awareness, the field of awakened awareness, which to them is like the fundamental nature of reality, is the consistent, stable um, stream that we and everything arises from and is. So I'm just curious in what you were explaining. There would be moments where you'd be speaking to something, and it like I'm just curious how that kind of fits into your worldview. And as you're talking about meaning story, the kind of like different genres of the flamenco and the salsa as like these fluctuating. It's like the movement that's coming from like the stable base kind of thing. So anyway, um, I'll let you feast on what I laid out.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. The buffet is felt and warmly received, and it is received in infinite jest. Full the Buddhahood and the awakened awareness. Dan Brown, like you said, shout out to the master. I see him as a master and a mentor and a living incarnate field to tap into, that we're all capable of channeling his face, his voice, his eyes. The Dan Brown lives on. The Parkinson's did not destroy him in the slightest. He will forever remain in the gift waves of influence that he brings to the world, and the energy streams of minds he intersects with from the afterlife and beyond that even. So thank you, Dan Brown. Thank you for mentioning him and being hip to it. In answering this, I think I'm going to go first into the meaning wave question
Yeah.
of how meaning shows its head, and as a in the framework I've laid out, the framework has it as these soil bed almost, out of which the story is emerging. And I just want to honor you in seeing that meaning is a territory I'm navigating like live in the consciousness of how I live, and it's fully streamed in the sense of making sense of meaning, making, you know, the perspective taking phenomenon of consciousness is fundamentally the dizzying truth about all this conversation and all this work, this ontology work, this epistemology, the philosophical vanguard that we've created in conversations like this. Perspective taking is the nature of step backedness, this capable infinity to look at itself forever in the hall of infinite mirrors and reflection in Indra's web, and just seeing that, first of all, naming that, and then going to the soil bed and saying, to make meaning, to make sense out of meaning itself is fundamentally a perspective-taking journey, which requires the awareness of paradox, or the awareness of perspective, rather. Forget the paradox.
Yeah.
Just the awareness that you are stepping back in the act of stepping forward, and that it is that kind of quantum cloud. It almost is an instantiated parabola where you are stepping back, forward, and then the meaning is the connecting square circle between them, or the curve, the bell curve, the
Yeah.
connected bell curve. And for you, I see, I want to offer an invitation to disregard the soil bed and think of meaning as the sprout of itself, and forget about of itself. Just see it meaning as the sprout, and as an emergent property of the soil bed. And I think we got off track. We got off on the wrong track immediately in answering, and through no buffet fault of your own, but just through the sheer broadness of metaphor and offering any invitation to think of a metaphor in an explanation. I went there, and now I want to go here, which is an essential opposition to it, which is that meaning is cultivated through the emergent properties of a trifold system in your life, where you have one, a meditation, a mindfulness, a clarity, the awakened awareness, a journey towards awakened awareness. If not, you don't need to get there in the destiny sense of it to have meaning, but to have a vector, to have a horizon appointed towards where you're. That's one. And then you have the three. And this is from John Vervaeke. This is all from John Vervaeke, I think. Then you have an active motion in the physical, a sense of creativity, a sense of art, and to me that has to
Yeah.
involve a level of athletism
Yeah.
and a level of body mindfulness,
Yeah.
because you have the mind and you have the body, and those need to be nurtured
Beautiful.
and are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you, like, I love what you just said, the Raveki. Can you double click on the first one? Can you double click on the first part of what you just said?
Absolutely, with the mind and the
Yeah,
horizon.
yeah, the progression towards awakened awareness, and specifically the word horizon stuck out to me though.
Yeah, yeah. This is a beautiful question to explore, and that could be opened up over many, many hours, because it's a
Yeah,
map. It's a map, and it's territory that we
yeah,
live, and that we give field reports,
yeah.
on the trip of living the territory, and all of our reports are just maps for the world to have, gifts, our services, our artifacts, our offerings, and the map. The map of awakened awareness. I think what I attempted to do was give the map and give the I guess what I'm honing in on is, why does meaning arise out of a mind that has a connection to itself, to the field of consciousness
Yeah.
from which it was born? And to do that justice, we would have to examine deeply, closely, what the field is out of which consciousness was born, and what the journey is to deityhood and Buddhahood, and what the myth of the Buddha is. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, when you did the two different views, like for me that hints at, like, coming from the Mahamudra lineage again, the view of the relative self versus awakened awareness. Is that familiar with you?
The map. The
Like,
map
so in that view, like, the relative self is where all of the work of therapeutic modalities, internal family systems, things like this, the journey of becoming whole again, pretty much. That's that's all in the realm of the relative self. But then on the other hand, in the realm of awakened awareness, there is nothing to heal. And that's like strengthening the view. But and what they say is, like, um both are incredibly important, and we have people like, the gurus who are sexually abusing their followers, kind of thing. Like, these might be examples of people who have achieved genuine enlightenment and have a really strong have clearly stabilized in a state of not a state, a view of awakened awareness, but have not done the work in the realm of the relative self.
Mm.
And then there's people, like a lot of people in the West, who are doing endless work in the realm of the relative self, but maybe who would benefit a lot from having a practice of strengthening awakened awareness in their life. Does that make sense? And so, like, and maybe this is kind of like coming back to the formless that is then taking form in these different genres like salsa and flamenco and different stories and things like this, is that there is the pathway of awakened awareness, and then there is the Verveki thing, which you were saying, which is like all of the creative expression and connecting to kind of like your um, innate unique gifts, and the athlete and the body. And like for me, that's all of the the like the fluctuation and the different genres that, I guess, the source of awakened awareness takes form as on the individual level. um
Thank you.
yeah.
Beautiful. I love that. I have immediately so many thoughts, but just two, to, as usual, to focus on. One before which is a caveat to the audience and to listeners. When we say athlete, I really want to focus that this whole framework of how you orient is all that matters, and how you orient is metacognitive in nature. And we can get into metacognition and how meditation is a twofold skill that you're training. Focus is only one half of what meditation does for you, if that. But the metacognition for how you talk to yourself and how you view your horizons, and how stagnant you are in planning goals and orienting to see yourself as an athlete. All that an athlete means is that, I have identified with the growth of the consciousness, of the awareness of your physical body. It has the limitation for, whatever your handicaps in life are, or whatever cards you've been dealt, or wherever you are, regardless of even if you're just completely healthy, well and capable and lazy, to orient, like mentally and capable of orienting to the gym, you can choose a horizon that works for you, that you have identified as, this is resistance I can meet, and in overcoming it in tiny ways, I am conscious of choosing the path that is progression in the physical body, because if not, I am rejecting my flesh as beauty.
Yeah. Beautiful. I'm going to be right back. I need to go pee again.
Beautiful. This means I get alone time to speak to you. This guy's amazing. I think we're going to do 1,000 of these. This is your own journey. Beautiful.
All right, so this is really great, man. I love where we're at, and this is kind of the heart essence of what I wanted to talk about in relationship to meaning. Because I feel like meaning is one of these things where we can try to define it, but it is just so, it's like this elusive little creature that doesn't want to be tied down. And it's like, and I guess this is where like metaphor really shines brightest, is like trying to point to the there, but knowing that the there can never actually be directly tied down, kind of thing. So the through line I'm trying to make here with meaning is that, you know, we can, like, I think I definitely believe that it is inherently meaningful to like create and express and tap into like the building and creating function of what it means to be a human being. But I think there's also a really interesting nuance of like the vastly different quality of meaning that comes when you're creating something that is in alignment with your blueprint. And like the importance of that. So, and like this is Viktor Frankl, that's like, you know, the three primary sources of meaning. The first one for him is like expressing and building something, like being in the act of creation. And all that to say, there is what I feel like part of what you're speaking to is that there is this incredibly important dimension of meaning, which is like our active engagement in assigning meaning to things. And so, like, one of the perfect examples for me is that there is very different ways that I approach that I approach meditation on a regular basis. And there are, in certain meditations, I feel so much more meaning within than others. And something that comes from Mahamudra, Dan Brown lineage of meditation is they set up the meditation. So there is a, you know, establishing bodhicitta, the enlightened intention. And like part of that is like this meditation, my journey of awakening is for the benefit of all beings. And like there's a quality of really deeply connecting to that. But then when I do that, all of a sudden this like practice of meditation is sitting inside something that is so much bigger, which is like for the full flourishing of my life and the life of others and all of life. And it's like, you know, so on the one hand, meditation for some people might be this like 10-minute morning routine that they saw on like self-improvement Instagram or something like this. And so I'm just saying that like doing like the same thing, like the same thing done twice based on the meaning that one self assigns to it completely changes the subjective experience of meaning in it. And that is a dimension of meaning that I think is so interesting. How I can do I can do the same exact thing, but yeah, you get what I'm saying here. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Mm, thank you. That's Thank you for naming all that and noticing all that, and bodhicitta, naming bodhicitta intention is huge, powerful. Um, the first, thank you. Meaning, I believe that meaning has a frivolous component and a depth component. And frivolous is not used disparagingly, and the metaphor I would offer is spirit and soul. And
Mm. Mm.
every human being has a spirit component and a soul component. And depth is our soul. It is soil. Soil is literally soul. And depth is the underworld. Spirit and soul. Depth is the underworld. And a psychopomp guides you through an initiation to the underworld. You know, a psychopomp is a messenger, a guide in the afterlife. And Hermes famously was the Greek myth of he was the only god, he was the only one of the gods who could travel to the underworld and to Mount Olympus. You know, none of the other deities there had that privilege, you know. And Hades, his home was the underworld. And the rape of Persephone and the scourge of Demeter and the founding of the Eleusinian mysteries as a result of the loss of daughter and the birth of winter. That is all.
Mm. Beautiful. I heard Martin Shaw say this recently, and I love it. He said, it's like spirit lives in the peaks, soul dwells in the valley." Yeah. So maybe we can transition a little bit here. Um, there's so many different things I want to ask you about. Is there anything that is particularly calling you in the direction of? I think it would be cool to talk about dreams for sure, the way you're relating to the dream world.
Thank you. Talk about, you know, Dharma, our calling, to talk about attunement
Let's
and
talk about calling.
calling. I feel calling is huge and powerful. And calling, I would love the etymology of calling. Like, calling.
What is the etymology of calling?
The etymology, it is irresponsible of me to speak authoritatively on. Etymology is fascinating, though. And adventures, I feel the calling and adventure and journey is the birthplace of meaning, and calling has a soul meaning. To me, the call and calling is the blueprint, as you mentioned, is the soul seed, the acorn, the daimon that's embodied through, outpictured in your soul, your world. You know, there's the daimon that is attached to you at birth, that is cut from the cloth, the golden thread of life, which is woven into the story of your life, which weaves into the tapestry, which in Buddhism, in the Buddha framework, the mandala, it's the tapestry that we are weaving with our soul is in the mandala, this cosmically enchanted mandala, that this mundane world is not mundane at all, that this is a sacred world, and we're all Buddhas and deities. We're composite deities made of sacred spiritual gift waves of influence, receiving mind streams from others, and this is more mundane in the sacred spiritual sense of things, in our more mundane perception of reality is part of our being asleep. And the literal call is to wake up in this lifetime now. And the call to adventure is to wake up and to be asleep, to deny that you're asleep, to refuse to wake up, to be encouraged, nudged, pushed, dragged, forced into a form of confronting the disillusionment shown as the adventure, and the middle part of the journey, stripping away the scales, shedding, always this step-backedness, this perspective taking, meaning and the journey as this fundamental walking in reverse, walking forwards in reverse, and what to wake up is this art of walking in reverse, learning to turn around, and then to walk in reverse again and return home and bring the gifts of having turned back and forth on the journey path that you are on. And that's it. That's adventure. That's the metaphor of the Buddha. That's, Jesus and truth. I think the Bible kind of lost the audience, the genre of the Bible and the audience it has now. There's a lost synchronicity. There's a great call to adventure in all Bible readers to wake up to the metaphors in the Bible and to see the truth, see the symbolism, and to read it like a Buddha story. To Socrates too, these three guys, these figures who kind of, at the last turn of the equinox, when we really zoom out on the astral calendar, these three figures, again, this trifecta emerges in the whole Vedic, out of the one was born the two, out of the two was born the three, and out of the three the many. Trifecta has been the supporting structure of meaning and story forever, and infinity. The trifecta is the infinity. It's the bedrock. There has to be a trifecta, a trinity. There has to be a Buddha, a Socrates, and a Jesus for all the cultures and egregores of the world to make sense of themselves.
How do you think about where we are as a society, as Western culture, in terms of like our detour away from everything that you just spoke to, like that way of life of in harmony with that sense of calling, the stories of the myths of people that arose from that same well, and like all of that as like the bedrock of culture that was able to nurture and grow humans into sufficient members of the earth family, that all of that we have clearly in some way taken a detour from as Western society in 2026. I'm just curious how you like think about maybe like that on a more mythopoetic level, and maybe like where we're going. Like,
Thank you. Yeah, I would love to get bring the mythos alive and stoke and zoom out on the turning that we're in. And I mentioned the zodiac and the astral, the precession of the equinox, the great turning. I see, the culture, the story of the egregores as its own worthy, just like a human life, the world, at every layer consciousness, we have this ability to personify and anthropomorphize ourselves into the mirroring, the empathy of what's going on and understand actually things that are alien to us. And that's the great gift of our consciousness, and that's the great gift of having a human body. You get to be a mammal, and our consciousness gets to be whatever we orient towards. So I want to speak to that nature of consciousness and empathy as the gift, the great gift of a lifetime, the great gift of infinity, and just say on a personal level that whatever you, absolutely, this is, the only thing that's anathema to healing is boredom. We're here to take the boring and anthropomorphize it with myth and alchemize it and to heal by looking at it. I believe that pronuncially, providential, the only thing that's provisional yeah, I think there's a lot of thoughts that are kind of overwhelming my brain right now, and I'm wondering what do you think that boring is? Where do you see boring as fitting into this framework? How does boring land on you with the question of our culture and meaning and how boring feels? How does it feel to be boring? The identity of boring as well as the felt somatic representation, the internal boring essence of, not to mention like boring into something is an act of depth, and depth perception. And
Yeah.
what does boring take you to? What are the landscapes?
Well, what's something that you said that I just want to re-invoke in the space, at least I don't know if this is exactly what you said, but the way it landed to me was the incredible gift of consciousness and empathy. And to deeply feel into that as like the gift that we have been given as humans. And there's something that really touches deeply for me. So I appreciate you saying that. And I think it's just a really nice reminder in like the day to day in terms of my priorities of how I am using my time and energy and the skills that I want to cultivate and the aspects of my life I want to generate. And it's just like consciousness and empathy and how that is feels so deeply connected to meaning, to living a deeply meaningful life. And yeah, so I appreciate you speaking to that.
Thank you.
Boredom. Yeah, I feel there's so many different ways I could go with this. I hesitate to just go down the same place that I feel like, everyone says online of like our culture sucks at being bored, which I hate to go down that, but I mean it it's so I think it is so just so true, you know? And and
I take back everything I said about healing being perverse to boredom. I think what you just said, just a light bulb clicked, and I think boredom is the antidote. And I'm clicking on big time right now that to be boring, to bore into yourself, and to be boring and honor boring, the boring call. The call to the mundane is fundamentally the call to the sacred. Thank you. So thank you for that. I appreciate you.
you want to keep
Thank you.
going?
My, I could speak to my interpersonal state, but I wanna offer the torch to you and see what comes
Yeah.
up, and kind of, shift gears a little in this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I've thought about, so this is shifting gears, like when I think about like our culture and whatnot, sometimes I'll think about it in that like we're learning how to be human. Like since like the evolution of our species into what we now know as what it means to be human, it's like I feel like we're learning how to be human and like indigenous cultures, cultures of the past and ones that are still living, like um I think they understood something deeply fundamental about the relationship of ego and soul, and their cultures grew out of that understanding and developed practices kind of like what Godzi talks about, the ego as a wolf, and like in that if depending on how we raise the wolf, you might end up with like a dog that's just like vicious when other people go around and whatnot, versus like having the wolf that hunts by your side. I mean, I don't say that metaphor perfectly, but I think that's so beautiful in the way we can talk about the ego. um and like cultures understood that, and so they, I've been thinking recently, talking about meaning, writing about it, and uh how horribly Western society has done in terms of helping cultivate that in its people. But just the role of culture, like a is like to grow individuals, like a plant. Like culture grows individuals. I think like in a healthy culture grows individuals into robust, flourishing members of Earth. Um, and so all that to say, like these ancient cultures um, grew individuals into people who, yeah, kept that relational worldview and way of being alive in a way that wasn't like the wolf that bites everyone, the ego that's disconnected from everyone. And then like Tyson Yunkaporta and Sand talks about like the seed of narcissism, that and they have a whole story about it that I can't remember, but at some point like started to grow and grow, and then here we are, Western culture with basically a culture of egos that are completely disconnected from soul, and I think there is a way to look at where we're at as just like the complete manifestation of an ego that's been disconnected from its grander web of relationality. Um, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for stoking the flame and keeping the ember alive. I'm pinging, and the pings are interesting to share. And I what's really landing right now is the value of being in your body, and in that kind of emergent, cultural I want to thank you for bringing the indigenous wisdom into the picture and the conversation. And Western culture has so much to remember and to learn and to forgive in itself, and to look towards and orient to the horizon of older cultures that they have, savaged and ravaged, either in the skepticism of the value of the myth, or in the physical ravaging of the people who lived, and the cultures who died and were buried, or are still struggling to reclaim their culturehood and heal from the trauma of Western disembodiment. And this fundamental insomnia and this waking, this compulsive waking obsessiveness that has driven our culture forward into the neurotic sleep state, into the waking robot, into the disembodiment of wisdom, and to removing the body. And so much of this is evidenced in the way that women have been treated in the historical literature, particularly in medicine, and just all of the gentleman science in the dark paradigm of history, when mothers weren't around their children because the doctor thought it was unhealthy for them after being born, and the whole, the way that germ theory overcompensated, 1,000 things that we could go into, the way that clitorises were, mutilated and as a form of treatment of insanity and hysteria, and just 1,000 misgivings, 1,000 crucifixions of 1,000 crucibles, 1,000 annihilations of love and wisdom, and the embodiment of essentially the truth, which is that you have to feel your decisions forward. As a culture, as an individual, as a soul that doesn't know what's up ahead, and how to orient is how to make meaning. The way that you orient is literally the way to make meaning in your life, because you have a horizon, you have a picture, and you have a representation of your ship that you know how to sail. Like, by definition, having a horizon means you know how to move water in it's alchemical, because it's the rowing, it's the moving it behind to push yourself forward. And the ship that you're sailing and the representation of who you are to yourself is given to you. It's built, it's built for you, and then by you. It's built by you and built for you.
Yeah.
And that there is just one last thing to dovetail on, which is kind of the dangers of insomnia that we're facing, and that I guess I want to emphasize, I can't emphasize enough, that the dearth of restorative practice in our life, in our culture, the wound of insomnia, regardless of how many hours you sleep at night, you are not dreaming the way that our culture dreams, and the way that the horizon of dreaming in the human lineage and the mythos of being a human is meant to dream. We all have a dreaming wound, and we all have a culture that is connected to our culture wherever we are in the world, that has thrust insomnia upon our expectation for reality. It has just built itself into our minds, and we have to reclaim our minds by throwing off the yoke of insomnia and shaking these dreadful curtains we wear unflinchingly.
Please go into more of the cultural wound we have around dreaming.
We can go, 14 days with hunger at least, we can go 3 days with thirst at least. I don't even think we can go 2 days without dreaming. It's one of the most dangerous things to not do for the human body.
When you say dreaming, are you meaning dreaming at night, or both, or?
REM. I'm talking specifically, the brain will corrode itself literally,
Okay.
and figuratively if the requirement for dreaming is not met. your brain will start to eat itself alive if you're not having dreams. If the insomnia is actual and the confinement is physical and the dream world is not entered in a regular basis, the lack of REM sleep is one of the most damaging things a human being can undergo in terms of deprivation. Only above it is oxygen. And in terms of the general needs, obviously there would be like certain molecules or other random shit that you could go, the deprivation of would kill you instantly. But in terms of general things we do every day that we take for granted, such as eating and drinking water and walking and sleeping in a restorative way, the lack of it is a corroded brain, and the lack of it in a culture is a corroded myth. And the lack of it in a world is a corroded ecosystem. And the current waterfall that we are sailing off of, and the cliff that our world, the precipice that we all have to confront and face, is, are we gonna let this built ship, this insomnia ship, continue to steer itself into a apocalypse, an invisible winter of death in the literal sense and not the rebirth? Or are we going to build wings and fly and take our dreams to our personal heaven, to find our sky? And basically, we're going to Sky World, baby. We've got to fucking take this planet and put some wings on it. This built ship that's rowing itself down this one narrow path through insomnia off a cliff is unacceptable. And as each of us as human beings, we need to stand up and fight for our dreams. We need to stand up and fight and say it's unacceptable that insomnia is the paradigm that we have been gaslit into accepting. We've been, hoodwinked into normalizing. We've been traumatized by the language around dreams and by the narrative and the opinions, the misappropriation of the dream world as fictional, and the misappropriation of fictional as less than non-fictional, in addition to story. Just we have been disserviced by the egregore that we accept and that we feed with our minds and our attention, and thinking that insomnia has anything to do with a rational culture. And in even claiming that we have insomnia as a wound, that even claiming that as a culture we have a huge blind spot for our lack of dreams and for the lack of vibrancy around our dream life. So yeah, no, thank you.
Amen, man. Seriously.
Brainwashing.
Really, amen. Yeah. I want to clarify something to land the plane here a little bit, though, because we are talking about we are talking about the dream in general, being able to hold the dream, but you're specifically more of talking about dreaming at night in REM sleep. And so when you're talking about this mass insomnia, is there a part of that where you're literally talking about that most people in our culture are like sleep deprived to the point where they're not getting enough REM sleep?
There absolutely is a physical wound with insomnia in our culture, and there absolutely is a physical wound with our sleep systems, our habits, our evening routine, our lack of praying. To pray is a human activity. To dream is a human activity. The fact that skepticism has encroached at all on the birthright of just having these be untainted phenomenon in the myth of a culture is unacceptable in the extreme.
Yeah.
No question, full period about that. And I do, there is a physical wound, and there is a cultural wound, which to me, it dovetails in a lifetime spent working towards the calling of dreaming and working to orient to the fundamental nature of the landscape that we're in. This great turning of the wheel, if we look at from where Buddha came with his calling and how he answered it, and where I come from with our calling and how I'm answering it, and what's going on in the world right now, what our calling is as individuals, it's not to wake up. The Buddha The time of the Buddha was to wake up. The time of the last 2,600 years, the last precession of the equinox in the age of Pisces was to wake up. The age of Aquarius, the calling is to dream. I mean that in a literally, metaphorical, and culturally. And that dreaming is a restorative art. It's a healing thing. The physical wound to dream and to reconnect with dreams will bleed into the physical reality you hold dear. Without a wound, there is no healing, and without healing, there is no magic. So we do have to be honorable to our wounds.
Yeah.
In addition to that, the emotional soul body of a human being is nourished through dream time, through an associative relationship, cultivating the language of thinking in the dream world terms, speaking symbols, speaking clearly to yourself in non-metaphorical, non-literal terms, living the associations out, dream blooming, out picturing the wishes and the fulfillment of strange fantasies that occur to you in the nighttime, and honoring them as a personal, intimate relationship with some force outside of you, outside of time, some dreamer that is the closest thing to God with a capital G. It is the asymptote of the divine, and it is incalculably here to guide you. And the wound, the calling of a lifetime, is to heal our wound and reconnect. Thank you. And thank you.
All right, we're going to transition a bit into the practicalities of Mr. Sean Thornton.
Thank you for muting yourself with that sneeze. That's legendary. Expert level podcaster Blake Chaffon.
Practice that one in the off hours.
Kobe Bryant, the Black Mamba.
So this is a little bit of experimental territory that I am very excited for, and this is an act of feeding my unique zone of curiosity. I will call this the artist profile. Welcome to the daily rituals section of our podcast. So I'm super curious. We'll start off with do you have a consistent schedule slash what is your relationship to routine as an artist and consistent, reliable practice? Do you have a particular day that you create in, an area, the day that you've recognized your highest level of creativity is? Do you optimize your schedule around that time? What's, your rest? All of the things.
Thank you. The profile of an artist. I love this. So, magician. My answer to your question is magician, and I will magician.
That's it.
Magician. Thank you. No, and seriously, I have to open a can of wonderful worms and just offer an invitation to you to honor the archetypes of artist and artistry in the profile, and delve into the deep work of what the archetype of an artist, how he sees himself or herself or themself or itself. What is the archetype framework? And I would encourage you not to fit them into any boxes, like the classic KWLM of Robert Moore. And we can talk about that, and I have a riff on all of those.
I don't even know what that is. All right,
King
let's go.
Warrior,
Let's
King
go
Warrior,
there.
Magician.
Oh, okay, yeah. I get that.
Absolutely.
So, well, I am curious because the artist profile is obviously it's not a. When I say that, I know you mean yeah. No, I want to hear this. This whole riff that you're opening.
Going too deep on that. I want to answer the evening routine question, and I will riff on that. I promise. and I do need to explain
Yeah.
the routine while it's coherently available, because the clarity I have is recent and more recent, and the getting things done protocol, the organization protocols, to me, the evening routine, the morning routine are fundamental and oppositional to the organizational struggles, and this is why and how magazational thinking ties into it, associative thinking. The gist of this, the answer to this question, is that my brain leans and relies heavily on associative thinking in creativity. Associative thinking is the art of ADHD, of mastering ADHD and owning it and reclaiming it as a birthright and a gift, and seeing mental illness as a parabola, and anything that is your weakness is also your greatest strength, and it's your duty to dig in yourself and to honor the wound of your weaknesses by creating and alchemizing them. And that is the journey. That's the motherfucking parabola. That's the adventure. That's what the hero does with alchemizing his gift, his blueprint, the totality of circumstance of our own life. So to keep going on this train, my magician mindset, my archetype, how I identify as the magician as opposed to the king or the warrior. The magician has this proclivity for spontaneity, for creativity, for the thread work. The thread work is intuitive insights, inspiration, a lot of I things, a lot of instantiation of an idea into an almost perfected rough draft of it, and so much less the anal retyping and the editorial publishing, so much less it's so much more the rough draft creativity that shines bright, and that there's 1,000 threads and that are golden like to go down, and that the art and the calling of your lifetime as a magician is to hone the relational capacity, to have the metacognitive awareness in noticing as soon as a thread presents itself that is like a fish hook, like you have it's bobbing to the surface, the memory of the creative insight, the creativity, the association of the feeling of how to honor it. It's all available to you instantly, and every second you waste in finding the pages and sitting down and carving out the introverted time, the focus, and the distraction-free environment to reel in that fish. Every second, the king of entropy is reclaiming it in the underworld of creativity, and in the sea of entropy and the sea of its resurfacing is a rare thing. And you have to pray, and you have to be honorable, and you have to have organizational capacity in your own mind to get a resurfacing of these ideas as a magician. So the way my routine works is that the pages are my routine. The way that I show up for the pages and what the pages are is the routine, and then everything in between the pages. And I'll go into the types of pages I do and what they represent to me, the archetypes of the pages in a creativity day, a perfect
What
day
do you
for
mean when you say
creativity.
pages?
Pages, that one means, I will get to that, and before I do that, I just have to say that the organizational getting things done that fills the gap between means always having a recording device on you, whether it's a phone to text yourself insights, messages, ideas, and you always have to have a capture system because of everything I outlined about being a magician and how that works. The pages is a ritual, and having a capture system is just a handheld pocket, a daemon of sorts, as like a warlock would, or just some type of
Straight up magic.
just the mage energy. You have to have the spell casting, capturing of the spell casting. The spell casting will happen on its own. You as a magician have to be equipped at all times in the capturing of these ideas. So that means having a recording device, a phone, a pocketbook, ideally at all times, but at a minimum, at least one of the three. and then the medium of written word, digital shamanism, or the voice, the spoken word. You kind of honor the whisper, honoring the call to the wind, honoring the inner echo, as I like to think of it. And
Yeah.
so,
Having the
to go
capture
to
and then
the
the
pages,
like the cultivated vehicle for that to express into
absolutely.
form.
Capture, and then this is what I'm the weakest, and what could be my greatest strength is creating a review system and
Yeah.
revisiting all that you've captured. So I
Yeah.
can't speak to that too much because I'm weak, and it's going to be the strength I grow in this year and have to grow. But the pages, the ritual of the pages is fundamental to what everything, all of these insights and all of these ideas are generative and pronounced more in your life, the more that you cultivate a relationship to your artist that is a routine, that is a discipline that plays out over time, and that is ritualistic. The easiest way for a magician to do this, for all the audience, any audience people who resonate with the magician archetype, I would encourage you to lean heavily in that direction of like rooting yourself in the pages in terms of evening routine and morning routine, and less so much in definite time blocks or definite activities. The ritualistic relationship to the pages is paramount. The reason is what the page is sitting down with yourself and an empty written word container. If you're leaning as a magician into digital shamanism or the inner echo more than the written word, go there. The written word is what calls to me as a writer, because the craft and the competency and the calling, the voice of how to get to the horizon the cathedral I want to build is through competency in writing. And competency in writing, I heavily believe that the fundamentals, as in all things, in music, in juggling, in athlete, being anything, being skilled in anything, starting and just always never leaving, actually, the fundamentals is the root cause of it all. So pages, to me specifically, this is the last bit and then I'm done. And what it is I have four to five pages I do every day. There's a set number I write. They're a classic printer paper, 8 by 12 inch. I write 3 pages, not double-sided, just one and a half, one side, back side, other side. And they do so much. And the category for each of them, the first one on awakening, is either if there was an explosive dream, this is why it's 4 to 5. If there's an explosive nighttime residue, I write a page in bed, sitting up, of the dream associations, the feelings, the story, the narrative, the theory of mind of the dream, the landscape of the dream, the description. Sometimes it's fiction, like
Are you doing
written.
like dream blooming process like
No,
like no. You have your
this
own
is
way of
a
dream working.
this is maverick territory. This is
We'll
learning
save
new
that for we'll
territory.
save that for the next podcast.
Yeah, it's associative. It's associative thinking, and in general, it's just trying to bring associative thinking into waking life. So save it.
We're gonna double click on that in the next one too. I wanted to ask more about. You mentioned associative thinking as like kind of like
The
in
phenomenon.
creativity,
Yeah,
but
as a left brain hemisphere, as anathema to the left brain hemisphere, or not. Fact check
yeah,
me on which hemisphere does what, because I don't fucking
I think it's left hemisphere.
know. So to continue with the pages and just the definition of my day, sitting upright in bed is huge, and writing before leaving the bed. And if the dream is not sparkling, then that's the morning page time. And morning page is the artist's way, the journal, the
Yeah,
creativity. It's writing whatever comes to you.
yeah.
And that really just
Oh,
refines the process of understanding how you are the thing that things come to.
yeah. Cool. So so either writing, free association. If the dream was popping the night before, if not, then just classic artist way, journaling, kind of mind sweep vibe.
Yeah, yeah, the creative mind sweep of like whatever the hell is
Yeah.
whatever the
Yeah.
hell my hand moves across the page. It's literally
Yeah.
like such a thing where I don't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
creativity is, who's doing the
Yeah.
writing, where the writing comes from. It's the thing that teaches me every day I'm a different human being.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
So
So that's the
just
first page.
boom. First, so that's point 0.5 and 1, if we're looking at it as 4, the archetypes of my day. This is, again, the morning pages are non-negotiable. The evening routine is non-negotiable. This next one is non-negotiable, but I don't always make it written. I do a
Yeah.
recording of it
Okay.
sometimes, and I that's my compromise, that inner echo, listening
Yeah.
to the inner echo. What it is music. It's musical pages. So I sit down with a guitar or a banjo for X minutes with a coffee sometimes, or a matcha latte, some
Hey,
delicious homemade
cool.
caffeinated
The
beverage.
caffeine intake's essential on the artist
Caffeine, the
profile.
drug,
The artist
musical
profile.
drug guy over here.
All right, let's
Big
go.
drug
Coffee or
guy.
matcha? Cool.
Caffeine,
Usually just
yeah,
one drink a day, or
I
you
just have
like
to,
multiple
I
kind of
just have
cups
to
of that?
say to the world and to everyone and to myself and you, caffeine is underrated as a psychedelic in the extreme. Like when I'm sensitive, you get
Same.
sensitive, you get clear as a creative, caffeine is all you need. And marijuana is a hell of a bitch when, like, she's wild. I love
Yeah.
her, and I am terrified of marijuana. That psychedelic scares me more than anything, and I have an
Yeah.
inner pact about it. But from
Yeah.
now on, I'm just like, I
What's your
apologize
inner
for the
pact with it?
profanity. That was a Graham Hancock reference, calling it the green bitch. And the witch is a little nicer, but he had an
Yeah. Yeah.
ayahuasca download to ditch smoking it as a writer. He copiously smoked marijuana, and I
Oh, really?
can't
I didn't know
copiously
that.
smoke it.
I
Yeah,
can't
he had
either.
an ayahuasca ceremony, and yeah, he was high 24/7 when he was writing all his biggest works. And in
Wow,
2016, he
interesting.
he had ayahuasca tell him you need to, and he went home and smoked it first thing when he got back, and just nauseating waves of nauseating
Wow.
complete revulsion,
Interesting.
and just all of the ayahuasca mama energy of just like
Yeah.
the green the green
Yeah.
bitch. Cultivate a relationship where it's not the green bitch, because marijuana is a sacred chemical, molecular, divinely holy mother of a plant goddess, and to make it a green bitch is your failing as a human, to make
One
it an
sec.
addiction. So yeah, and I'll just keep talking for the audience, to honor the pages, and say, the archetype of the pages goes musical, and then it goes mental, and then it goes astral. So if you think about it, it's uh, yeah, I guess carnal, musical, alchemy.
All right, cool. This is epic. We're making progress. We kind of got off on the tangent of the caffeine, but second page is music. This is what you were telling me earlier, where every single day you write a new song.
Carnal musical. Yeah, it's the carnal musical alchemy of the day, and it just clears out the
Epic.
musical morphogenetic residue that has just built
Yeah.
up over 7 years of relating to the craft.
Yeah.
Um, and it just kind of explodes out, and then when I do it, I don't feel like an obligation or responsibility to train musical competency, because I'm a creativity guy. I'm a magician. I'm not a king or a warrior. I'm over here as
Ah,
a
and that's
magician.
more of where the competency lies.
And so and the competency I
That's
train is
interesting.
creativity. I'm creativity fishing. That's how I see myself, as creativity fishing. And the competency to train, I'll get there in my own time.
Mm,
because it's just part of being a fully fleshed out, realizable human. But the creativity of like, what is your calling attuned to naturally, and
yeah.
what is the thing that stokes the inner echo and that flame of like, creativity is alive when I do this for myself, you know.
Yeah. That's really okay. I'm just saving all the things we're going to double click on next episode. Um, all right, so we're done with page 2, page 3.
Mental writing,
Okay.
fiction, heady storytelling.
Fiction. You write a story.
Yeah, it's a mental removal from the first person. It's not a story in the coherent sense of it. It's a fiction. It's creative writing in the third person. Mainly the third person. It's 3 pages of creative writing in the evening routine before bed, before the final pages, where I write in the third person story bits, just whatever pops into my head. If you want a sample, I can read you what I wrote last night for 2 seconds. But
Yes.
if okay, it's just the spontaneity of basically honoring the fiction writer in me, and the fact that it is a skill and a muscle to write from the honoring the fiction writer and cultivating the creativity where this will just explode out of me one day into a coherent story, because right now it's just incoherent. Here we go. A modelin whispered. Blue, he said. Blue? The human being was beginning to learn his voice, not the modelin again. The trench of the dam, half a mile from the town's west end. Billy could see the far bank. He did not stand for the truth of his friends, his finest recollection, and his creation, regardless of what he did. It healed him immensely to work on this gift of the muse. The music whispered ahead.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Storytelling. Incoherent storytelling.
I love this. I love what you said about it almost feels like poking the bear with these daily acts, and then eventually the bubble pops or what have you, and the catharsis happens where it pours through. I definitely feel that as well, and it's more than anything, I love like the sense of inevitability that you're speaking with. That like what you're doing is leading to a place like that.
Thank you.
And selfishly, please write an article or an essay about your pages,
Mm-mm.
breaking it down and articulating the why behind it,
Mm,
because I would
that's a
love to read
beautiful
it.
idea. Okay.
It's a
Deal.
super cool,
Contract.
impressive too. That's the daily thing. Like that's the daily driver. It's that's the autopilot that you get to rest into on a daily basis. And
And I want to honor the cumulative time commitment for a magician to do this is 1 hour a day. You know, when you hone in on it, the cumulative
all of
time
that together takes an hour.
15 minutes for 3 pages is my average creative writing. And the trick is to not slow down or stop. Stopping is the enemy. Choose incoherent writing over stopping. Incoherent will become
Amen.
coherent. Stopping is the enemy. The resistance is
Yeah.
stopping. So in each
Yeah.
of these, it's 15 minutes because as soon
Yeah.
as I put the pen down, I don't stop writing.
Yeah. Is that the way that you do any kind of writing?
You know, selfishly, I'm going to say no, because editorial competency is like the great call and adventure of a writer.
Yeah.
And, Stephen King has a really good line, write with the door closed, edit with the door open. I completely believe in this, and selfishly I confess that I don't edit and I don't publish with the door open. And that's kind of the big wound I have and the healing I need to do and the growth in the craft and skill and training the crafting of the competency in writing articles that are for you and for your people, to
Yeah.
be a hero in the adventure. So my answer to that is that it's no. I don't do writing that slows me down, even though I should.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the magician.
Yeah.
That's the imbalance. That's the
This
muscle, you
project I
know.
just, huh? This
Please keep
project that I
going.
just finished, this essay is like, I was driving myself crazy with just like the amount of time rereading and thinking about it and rearranging and editing and rewriting and like kind of just missing that like fire hose of just it pouring through and that being enough. And yeah, I feel like um I don't want to say perfecting, but just the journey of learning to do the dance between like, you know, the stream of consciousness and the editing, or the fire hose and the, you know, the valve on the fire hose and the way that it can rearrange itself is such a, I mean, I guess it's the journey of being a writer, right? Yeah.
I have to use the bathroom.
Yeah, go for it.
Beautiful, man. This conversation is beautiful. It's dovetailed in so many ways. And yeah.
I'll just play a song for the audience. Try and wrap this thing up because I want to go outside in the sun while it's still light out. I do want to just like kind of maybe bullet rapid fire a bit more, like just more of anything else that comes to mind in terms of a and even though you're talking about the magician and how there isn't like a set time block or something, it does sound like there are these general buckets of like the morning and the nighttime that you tend to do your creative work within. So it's kind of like flow within structure, right? Yeah, cool. Anything else that comes to mind in terms of a schedule or a certain routine that you tend to rely on consistently and benefit from?
Accountability groups, diet, athletic training,
Hmm.
skill training. Skill training, I could dovetail, like, can just hone in on that briefly and explain and bullet point the skills I do. So it's pretty much the skills I train are movement of the body, so that's
Yeah.
stretching movement and exercise, um, movement of the mind, So that's meditation, and that's the Dan Brown way. That's the Mahamudra, the three-point body object, invoking the mentors, setting the intention for awakened awareness, awakening in this lifetime, the bodhicitta attention of eventually being a ultimate infinite cloning Buddha that can distribute through every interweaving tapestry of mandalas that the world of the Indra's web in every dimension has, to receive the compassionate healing of a sublimation and the ultimate awareness of what awakening means and what dreaming means. And that's honoring Maitreya from the end of time. And the third one would be juggling. So that to me is object skills, I put musical skills there too because my musical training is intuitive. So we have the body just without objects touching it, the body with objects touching it, and then the body being as the object which the mind is touching it. So those are kind of the three that I have for skill training. And
Yeah.
and I don't think there's a nuanced explanation for juggling I could give and for my musical process, but we could do an artist profile podcast that's way more
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
depth. And I'll
Yeah.
just
Cool.
save that double click for later and just finish with diet, just to recap diet, skills, um, the, I guess I don't remember some of the other ones that I said, but that's okay.
Okay. Beautiful. Um, I'm so excited to ask you about this. Let's talk about books. So you have clearly ingested and digested a plethora of wisdom and knowledge. Books, I assume, is a big source for you. Um, could you talk about your relationship to reading? Um, and then we're gonna get into book recommendations, specific books, things like this. But just generally, your relationship to reading. I know you said you've kind of been a big reader since you were young. But yeah,
Thank you. Right now I'm reading a lot less. I'm
what does
reading
that mean?
reading a lot now around I'm writing, reading, I think what that means is that I have a wound with reading that I need to heal, because the call of a lifetime is reading now, in writing. It's kind of the dual-sided. Again, it's that whole imbalance in my magician life and this writer who's just a stream of conscious machine and is proliferate in that, but slowing down and opening the door and welcoming and making it coherently coherently meld in the mesh of a mind stream of a greater world and audience is kind of a dearth of mine, and reading is a huge part of that. What I will say is that I'm slowly reading 5 books all at once, and that it really helped to get clarity on getting a device like a Kindle that only is for 5 books
Yeah.
and only has 5 books at most, because I'm
What
a
five books?
Gemini and I fucking go in every thousand direction. Um, the soul sign of a ADHD guy who's not at all ADHD, but the 5 books is Dan Brown, The Elephant Path, Inner Work by Robert Johnson, Sustainable Happiness by Joe Louiso. Although I must confess, when I say reading that book, what I really mean is that a synchronicity led me to an exercise on a certain page, that reading means showing up to spend 15 minutes with that exercise on that page and do nothing else, because the book is a behemoth.
Yeah, it is.
And that exercise is like a fast path. It's like the turning the mind wheel, which he talks about in lectures. the digital shamanism inside of like listening to podcasts with Chris Beish, listening to Joe Louisa talk, that's where I get the downloads usually, is the spoken voice of these teachers and mentors. And I'm going to continue with these books, but I will caveat and say that my current goal in streaming the downloads of wisdom is to listen to every Dan Brown lecture on the internet, because there's only like 19 of them. And that man is just a gift of a lifetime and a godsend of a teacher to me. Like from now on, forever, personally, I feel his image imprinted on your soul. So, fucking the 5 books is gonna be those. Getting Things Done
Yeah.
is the
Oh,
fourth one,
okay.
and Dreams of Awakening, which is by Charlie Morley, and it's about Indo-Tibetan lucidity, and it's a dream yoga for the Western world. And he has a really good documentary on YouTube. I would encourage people to just listen to. Again, all of these, take not the book unless you identify as a writer reader type of
Yeah.
person, or a king archetype, and just go on YouTube and listen to the voice signature of these individuals. Each of them is profound. Robert Johnson, Joe Louiso, who Robert Johnson I haven't even gotten to, and listening in my own absorbing of his voice signature, his own thumbprint that he left on the internet. But the internet is the fast path. It's like enlightenment is accessible to everyone because there is fast path to all of the teachings that
Yeah.
has been made. The map is available. All the map is the new territory. You're fucking there in the internet. Joe Louiso, listen to him. Dan Brown, listen to him. David Allen, fucking find David Allen and just listen to that guy podcast because he's a champ. And Charlie Morley, just find the documentary on lucid dreaming, do the shit he says, and Dreams of
Yeah.
Awakening.
Beautiful. I'm not going to ask you for specific number or any sort of order, but I would love to hear a couple books that have been the most profound for you in your life.
That question now. I could talk, I could give a write up on that question for a long time. Like
You should.
if I sat with that question for a week, I could come back to you and give you a really good answer for what books changed me at each part of the myth. And also, if I sat for 2 weeks, I could give you an even better answer about the myth for what I call, the whole myth yourself movement, and this idea that we need to make myth sense out of the lifetime we've lived so far to grow into coherent storytelling and meaning making. And there is no higher calling, just as a writer and as a creative and as a human being. So that all I want to offer to you as an invitation for us to continue the
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah. I would love that.
Mistborn would be my, if I'm going to answer this
Wow.
question chronologically in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah.
the development, the memories of development. And again, I'm not going to go into each of these why. And
Yeah,
there
yeah.
is a spoiler in the reason why I'm Mistborn. But if I zoom out and look at my life and the books that just alchemized where I was at and just fucking lit up a fire in me, going backwards might be easier, but I'm just going to keep moving. So,
Yeah. Go for it.
hmm, oh fuck, I lost it. There one surface that was hidden, the memory of like being a teenager and finding a book that really, oh, Way of Zen by Alan Watts. That one hit, even though I just fucking, even though it was technical terms, just being handed a book by a friend and being told like this changed my father's life. That alone, and then having the commitment to read it and take notes on everything, and I in doing that was alchemized, regardless of if the semantic meaning of the teachings was valuable or invaluable, which in hindsight I have no idea. I would have to revisit it and decide how valuable it is now. And Alan Watts as a character, how valuable he is in the myth-making system I have. But at the time, I derived great value, and that encouraged the myth of my life to continue and put me on the track. Sapiens would be the next one. Sapiens was a pinnacle book, and I can explain why. There's a whole huge story in the myth of yourself about it. But the fucking Next one, Siddhartha. The Alchemist and Siddhartha as two sides of the same coin. And then going beyond that period, yeah, those primed me for Sapiens, and then Sapiens kind of exploded me into taking steps to change. It alchemized. It gave me the empowering alchemy to actually act and do something, and all learning is behavior change at the end of the day, and the modification of your path. So those were kind of like in terms of the adolescence, and in terms of the adult, what I would say modern occultism by Mitch Horowitz, just for a synchronicity that was powerful, the one I explained to you that we talked about over alchemy. Regardless of how good that book is, the alchemy synchronicity that changed my life forever from now on and put me on this path was reading a paragraph about Kemet, about the history of chemistry and the etymology of Egypt and the Black Land in the fertile soil of the desert. In that framework, that was a paragraph from modern occultism. So irrevocably it gets top tier status just because alchemy was the synchronicity. Beyond that, it's kind of the books that are changing me right now. It's kind of like The Elephant Path. It's kind of like Sustainable Happiness. It's kind of like the five I mentioned, And I
Yeah.
haven't really alchemized the lessons yet, but yeah, those are kind of the big ones in a big way, and like showing up for them and showing up for the artist's way and Prometheus Rising and taking seriously the journey of learning from the authors.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Beautiful, man. Last question here on the book topic, which I definitely want to spend more time on. What are your top book recommendations, besides any that you've already invoked, from people who are no longer alive?
I have to honor one last thing. I'm going to answer that, but as you were speaking, I realized the seminal book that might have been the most important book I read at the time when I was in soul development and deep in the work of the wasteland, which we share as an archetypal understanding and could be explained to an audience who doesn't know. But the wasteland, just as a brief explanation, is the crying on the bathroom floor, the extended bathroom floor crying moment of your life, where you really are in the underworld and you really have taken the leap and there really is no looking back or turning back, and you really have to make sense of a story that you are mourning, that has traumatized itself by breaking it up in your acceptance of adventure, of soul developmental processes. And Care of the Soul is the book. A therapist I had recommended me read it. I have checked it out from Cabrillo Public Library, and it has changed me life forever. By Thomas More. Yeah, that's Thomas More. He was an acquaintance of James Hillman. He's a deep work kind of guy. He's a psychologist in the astral Jungian plane, and he fucking slaps. So, Thomas More.
All right, Dead People.
Dead people. Oh my god, that reminds me of Steve Poltz, dude. Do you know who Steve Poltz is? Have you ever? He's fucking hilarious. He's a comedian musician I saw at High Sierra, and he played multiple sets, but he played an entire set that was titled "I Sing Dead People," and all it was self-explanatory. He just covers of dead people's songs, and it was a beautiful. And he's just a single guitar guy on stage, and everybody fucking loves Steve Poltz at High Sierra Music
Cool.
Festival. He's like a celebrity, like a low key. Steve Poltz is my man. So dead people, I'm gonna go with Dan Brown. Dan Brown gets points, 100%. Even though I haven't finished it, yeah, he gets points big time in my book of life. And um, in terms of Siddhartha gets points, Hermann Hesse, everything by Hermann Hesse. I had a Hermann Hesse phase after Siddhartha. I read Narcissus and Goldman. I downloaded the story of like how Hermann Hesse sees the world, and I wrote a little biography for him as an assignment in my school at the time, my writing, reading, going through some, not his major one, not the Glass Bead Game, but Demian, And then funny enough, actually at the 11th hour, I met a guy named Demian who was named after the book Demian, who I freaking his grandparents knew Hermann Hesse, and Hermann Hesse had written them calligraphy as like a wedding gift. The fucking the book that is oh wow, it hurts to not have the memory accessible, but pretty much Narcissus, Demian. There's one more, Steppenwolf. That's probably the one that I would pick as the cherry on top. I read that twice at least.
Steppenwolf.
Steppenwolf, yeah, in the Magic Theater. I think Steppenwolf is a masterpiece, and it's hard to understand, but it is. That I'm like pinging hard right now that I need to read it again. Steppenwolf.
Who's that by?
That's Hermann Hesse.
Okay.
It's deep, it's dark, it's soul. It's kind of a pinnacle soul book. And Magister Ludi and the Glass Bead Game, I think, is also a soul work, but that's more of an epic compilation. I'm going to stick with Hermann Hesse for my answer and Dan Brown, and more focus on Hermann Hesse because he's someone I dovetailed into and kind of got absorbed by his work and his writing, and will revisit. I fully see myself reading his canon in my lifetime.
Beautiful.
So, yeah.
Incredible. Thank you. Thank you.
Literature.
For answering my questions.
Love it. Love your questions. Incredible.
Yeah, man.
You're incredible. You're phenomenal, man. You have a warmth. I love it. I love hearing you ask questions. I love seeing you receive. I love watching you witness your growth here. Like, I could see us, riffing for a long time together.
I think so. I think we could do one of those 4-hour podcast kind of thing. We just need to get super caffeinated,
Yeah. Yeah. Deep work. I'm down for it. I also, deep work, brother.
Yeah. Thank you. Much love, man. And
Much love.
Honestly, I feel like there's some deep diamonds of truth that I am going to be chewing on more.
Of luminosity.
Yes. All right. Ciao for now.
Ciao. From now on.